The Auburn Tigers are coming off that enormous win in Oxford where they pulled it out, stopping the Ole Miss Rebels inside the 5-yard line twice in the fourth quarter, winning that one 35-31. So it's on to another SEC opponent, this time on the Plains, with the Tigers hosting Texas A&M. And here to talk about the Aggies, and especially with a focus on Auburn heading down the stretch, we bring in Jamie Hancock of Preps Nation. Hey, Jamie, how are you?
I'm great, Mark. Thank you for having me on again tonight.
So it's pretty much standard stuff for this Auburn football team, as they have won 10 of 22 games in the last 2 years on the final possession of the game. It's been a one-possession game. They've been able to do it every time except for that BCS championship game against Florida State. So for a while, maybe people could dismiss this as luck. I think it's too good of a football team, and it's happened too many times. You would have to credit maybe something else happening within that Auburn locker room, Jamie.
There seems to be a propensity for this happening all the way back for when Gus Malzahn was the offensive coordinator, and the first time I remember it taking place was at Kentucky. And Auburn and Kentucky were back and forth, and Kentucky was not very good at that. Back down the field, Kentucky would score, and it was just back and forth and back and forth, and the game ended up being in the low 40s or upper 30s for both teams. But you just knew that if Auburn had the final possession, they weren't going to stop them, and they just proceeded to take the ball down the field and score with a couple seconds left. And that has gone into the Oregon National Championship game, and it has come back with Coach Malzahn as to, it was well documented last year as to what took place. And then this year, you're seeing it again. So I believe at some point it becomes about preparation and the ability to capitalize on the things that are presented to you more than just luck. I mean, you go back to the Hail Mary against Georgia, that's luck. I mean, that's pure luck. The return of Chris Davis against Alabama, that was preparation. There's a difference. And so this team appears to be one that is prepared well for these situations, and they're not afraid to have their backs against the wall. And that seems to be that they're able to take advantage of and not fold under that pressure typically.
I completely agree with those two instances, the way you outlined them there. It's one thing, let's say, when there's a fumble on the football field, when your defense caused it, your end rusher came around the end, made a strip sack, made a great play on the quarterback. It's another thing when there's a fumbled snap or something like that where your team did absolutely nothing to cause that turnover. They just benefited from it. So those are two completely different circumstances that you outlined there, aside from this point that Ricardo Lewis actually had to really keep his concentration and haul in that pass. A lot of players would not have made that catch. All right, let's talk about the quarterback development of Nick Marshall, coming off a nice 15 for 22 effort for 254 yards. Seems to be a good balance of rushing and passing when Marshall can throw it 22 times, and that's what Auburn had at Ole Miss last week.
I think that as we've talked about as the year's gone along, the game seems to be slowing down for Nick Marshall. He appears to be more in command not only of the team, but of his own emotions. You can tell by watching him that his body language is comfortable, and he's well in a groove as the quarterback of this football team. Last year, you saw just a little bit of panic and just a speed to what he was doing. He seemed to be rushed at everything that he was doing. This year, you see a bit more calm in his demeanor and how he carries himself on the field, and that translates to the players around him as well. And like you said, he's never going to have that Joe Montana type accuracy, but what he does provide you is the ability to make the team honor his legs and take advantage of the matchups that he was given this weekend. You saw Sammy Coates reappear this weekend on the deep routes, and the fact that Marshall puts the ball in a position to where Coates can go up and use that big body, make a play. I believe Coates is finally healthy enough to provide that back for this offense.
The Auburn defense gives up yardage, but at the same time has forced 18 turnovers. That's just one shy of what they forced in going to the BCS championship game last season. Only 16 sacks. We've talked about the issues rushing the passer in the past, but they did get 4 sacks on Bo Wallace. So it's an opportunistic defense, and we keep waiting for it to get better and improve, but I think they pretty much are what they are, but they know how to defend the red zone, that's for sure.
You know, that's something that they did last year. They were a really good second half team. They were a really good fourth quarter team and a fantastic red zone team. They have some of those uh, capabilities this year. They have an ability to make some plays when they need them. This weekend with the additional sacks, that was great. We talked about that, but I'm going to chalk that up to some deficiencies with Ole Miss and maybe some extra effort from the Auburn players in a sense, or extra focus on a couple of areas. They're not going to come out and get 4 or 5 sacks a week. That's not something that's going to happen. But we talked about the fact they need to knock the quarterback off his the pocket. They did that a lot, but credit to Bo Wallace for the simple fact that he just really never made that Bo Wallace mistake until the fumble, which was a little bit of an oddity. That was an extra effort play from him, probably ill-advised to try to stretch the ball back over your head in that sense. But he never really fell apart like a lot of people expect Bo Wallace to do when Auburn pressured him. Auburn really has to continue that. The turnovers they've gotten this year, you can credit a lot of those to Jonathan Jones, kid out of Carrollton, Georgia, who was a very unheralded recruit to a degree, was more of a track guy. He's got 5 picks this year. He's been victimized a few times, but he's really made some big plays. I think about 3 interceptions in the end zone. That's something that, you know, you start looking at and going, the guy has a tendency to rise up when he needs to.
So, Jamie, we've got a lot of known factors on this football team. The defense, even though it's inconsistent at times, we know that it's going to play opportunistic football. On the offensive side, even more known factors, and Nick Marshall's not going to be great throwing the ball, but he has stabilized himself as a passer. We know that the rushing attack's one of the best in college football. Coates and Williams don't have the numbers to back it up, but they are close to elite receivers when you're just talking about sheer ability. What are some of those X factors, though, that may be the difference between Auburn just being a very good top 10 or 15 team or making a run to the national championship?
Offensively, the big X factor to me is another guy that's not going to be mentioned. Is going to be Brandon Fultz. He has been a little better in the run game as a blocker. He's playing that Jay Prosh type role, not a prototype. He's about 6'4", about 270, kind of a big wide receiver in a sense, or a tight end, you know, to a degree. He's a guy that they hit out of the backfield a couple times against South Carolina, and I think they caused some defenses to back up a little bit and honor him. I think he's getting a little better also in the run game as far as the blocking out of the backfield as well. Defensively, Jonathan Mincy's a guy they've relied on heavily. He came in this year as their top corner. He hasn't played like that all the time. He's a guy that's got to step up for them. The biggest X factor on the whole football team is going to be Daniel Carlson for me. Auburn was one of the best teams in the country last year and the last numerous years kicking and punting. Daniel Carlson has been charged with the duty of not only taking over for Cody Parkey, who's kicking for the Eagles on Sunday, he's taken over for Stephen Clark, who really, in my opinion, was snubbed a couple times for a Ray Guy Award. He was a guy that didn't average the massive yards per punt, but he averaged about 40 yards per punt, and it was all net. So Auburn's been spoiled for several years in the kicking game. 2 guys that are NFL caliber kickers, and then in both spots. That's a tough task for a redshirt freshman. He's been fantastic on kickoffs, really solid on field goals, done a decent job in punting. So he's a guy that come towards the end of the year, the way Auburn likes to play, really close. They don't stop a lot of people on defense as far as the scoreboard goes. They're going to score on almost anybody. So you have to figure they're going to be in most of the games. Daniel Carlson could be a factor at the end of the season in a good way or a bad way. It just depends. I don't envy any kicker at all, and so kudos to him for the job he's doing, and good luck for the position that he may be put in.
Hey, Jamie, this Texas A&M situation has deteriorated to the point, even on offense, and that's Kevin Sumlin's baby, that even on offense, last week against Louisiana Monroe, I've got the numbers here, Louisiana Monroe, the previous number of games, was giving up 410 yards per game. Texas A&M, an SEC team that's supposed to be an elite offense, only managed 243 total yards against Louisiana Monroe, escaped with a 21-16 win. Okay, they've got elite wide receivers. They've got a plethora of wide receivers that we would expect to play on Sunday, but they've got a quarterback in Kyle Allen who's got all the accolades coming from high school. It's a #1 rated pocket passer, but stumbled and took it on the chin as being a freshman, a true freshman in his first start, just 13 of 28 for 106 yards. But if he improves as much as we might expect him to improve from his first to his second start, and they've got the wide receivers, that seems to be the one puncher's chance that Kevin Sumlin has, combining his offensive mind with the talent that he has at the skill positions.
I agree. Kevin Sumlin has done offensive wonders everywhere he's been, and you've never really seen his offenses struggle like this. And I go back to the beginning of the season, and I looked like a fool after week 1, but I said they will feel the Johnny Manziel factor. People didn't give Johnny Manziel credit for the what he brought to the football field for Texas A&M, and I can tell you he would have done that for any program in the country. He was that good. He was a difference maker. Of course, I didn't feel very smart after what they did to South Carolina at Williams-Brice. However, it's somewhat turned around for them, and they're in a disarray right now. I don't believe that they truly trust themselves and the guys around them, and when you see that happen, you can fall apart in a hurry. Now, Auburn's a beautiful example of that. Several years ago, under Gene Chizik, they looked like it was the Keystone Cops running around. They were inept in every sense of the word, but the ineptitude started in the locker room. It started amongst the players, the conversations that they were having when they were playing video games or just anything. The coaches were in disarray because of things. It all worked from the night out. Gus Malzahn comes back in with virtually the same players, and all of a sudden they were unstoppable after LSU beat them. So it's more about a mental mindset. Texas A&M has the talent. These are the same guys that looked unstoppable last year, minus Johnny Manziel and Mike Evans and maybe one or two more. This was the Keystone Cops was not a part of what they were doing. If they come into Jordan-Hare with those same problems, they're going to have a long day because defensively they can get after the passer a little bit. I don't believe that they can stop the power running game for Auburn, and that's something that they're going to have to put up points to deal with Auburn. And the thing is, with a guy like Kyle Allen, his stat line may look a lot better. The problem is if he turns the ball over about twice in that game, they may be done.
And as you well know, Jamie, they're not just dealing with one of the best teams in the country. They're dealing with a team that's been unbeatable against some of the best teams in the country at home in winning 15 consecutive football games. We've got Jamie Hancock of Preps Nation with us to break down the Auburn Tigers as they prepare for the Aggies of Texas A&M. Jamie, I believe we'll have some extra fun the next few weeks as we look at some upcoming matchups with Georgia and, of course, the Iron Bowl, which could be for all the marks. So we appreciate your time.
I appreciate being on here, and each and every week it's a joy to be able to come on and talk sports with you. It's always a pleasure.